Welcome back to our session on winding up. And today we'll complete this chapter of winding up, where we had started day before yesterday, and we had covered the first part from section 271 to 302, primarily focusing on main sections. And today we'll be covering the rest of the part, that is part 3, that is section from 325 onwards till 356, along with few practical questions, friends. So just a brief recall of what we have studied. Remember section 271. I hope we can recall this 271, 272, who may submit a petition. We have 5 people who can submit a petition. And then 273, it is about the powers of tribunal. You may raise your points, query, whatever you have in your mind. So this is power orders by tribunal, either admit it, yes, Namrata, Shriram, yes. So either admit it, pass an interim order, appoint a provisional liquidator, and so on. Then we had the section 275, where we had the appointment of the provisional liquidator or the final liquidator. Then he could be removed, that is general section. And then the importance of creating the winding up committee. We have understood the importance of winding up committee. And further, we have the role of the winding committee and the important section of 281, friends. Remember, we had discussed on 281, the report of the liquidator, which is one of the important part of this whole process. We could recall that the liquidator has various responsibilities: forming of the winding up committee, forming of the advisory committee, preparation of the report of liquidator, appoint of valuers, conducting the meeting of contributories and the creditors, and so on. So report of the liquidator has to be submitted within 60 days. As we have discussed in the last lecture, it consists of asset, liabilities, capital, and other points. I had segregated all these report into 4 angles. So that was about report of liquidator, and based on the report of liquidator, the tribunal will give certain directions under section 282. And we could connect it that if there's a problem, there's a fraud. Remember, the important part under the report is again the point where the company was promoted or formed with an intention of fraud. That is also to be a part of the report. And along with that, the viability of the business if the business is continued. One important angle, whether the employee will be working or not. Remember, it is a notice of discharge. Once the winding up order is made, it's a notice of discharge, but notice of discharge only when the business is going concern. So direction of tribunal, and then the importance of contributory. I think we had discussed this important point, the list of contributories. Who are contributories? Remember, contributories and members both go hand in hand, but contributories are those people who are even past members. So when I say members, though, names included in the register of members, but contributees will include all those members who are past members when the current members are unable to contribute to the asset. Then the past members will be called to pay the amount, but only to the extent of the amount which is unpaid by them towards that share application. And they will be liable only for those debts which were in existence on the day when they were members. And that to a limitation of 1 year only. I hope that is clear, that who can be called to contribute to the assets in the event of winding up. So definition of contributory, 2 lists, list A, list B. List A, present members. List B is past members. Past members are liable to pay when the present members are unable to pay. Then the obligations of the directors and the officer, and if they fail to do that, then penal provisions will apply. role, the importance of advisory committee. They will be advising the company liquidator, and in the event of yes, composition is around 12 members. We have discussed this, and there will be meeting of the creators and the contributors, and in the event of confusion between advisory committee recommendation and the meeting of the creators and contributors, then the meeting decision of the contributors and creators will prevail. Then the powers of the duties of the company liquidator. We have distributed, segregated the powers into business, statutory, and recovery powers. And that is very common because he has to run the business or carry on the company process. Then if there's have to be a control on the liquidator, then the method we have discussed by the advisory committee and the meeting of the creditors and the contributors. He has to prepare the books of accounts and receipt and payment that has to be audited and submitted to the tribunal also. And that has to be done twice. Remember, if the amount is unpaid from the contributory, then how it can be recovered, that we have also discussed. Based on the report by the liquidator after he prepares the list A and list B, and that is being submitted to the NCLT, the call will be made, and if the call is not paid, then he may approach the tribunal and the tribunal may pass an appropriate order. Then there is a provision of calling the people, power to summon. The tribunal has the power to summon people and to support this whole process and so on. So this we have just discussed, and ensuring that we do not spend much time in this whole process. Okay, so this was the last lecture. I hope we are able to recall. Now let us go ahead. Before we start with the next part, let us solve a few questions. People can answer it so that we are tuned in to this whole process. Okay, can you answer, friends? So the question is, whether the tribunal makes an order of appointment of provisional liquidator or the binding of company, it shall within a period of not exceeding this number of days cause intimation, therefore, to send to the company liquidator or the provisional liquidator as the case may be. So the answer is 7 days. Correct. Answer is 7 days. Who can initiate misfeasance proceedings? Okay, so official liquidator or company liquidator, any creditor or contributory, official liquidator, company liquidator, any other creditor or contributory, or none of these. So this proceedings will be initiated by, obviously, against the liquidator. It will be against the liquidator. So who can do that? Any creditor or contributory. Any creditor or contributory. Now, when a winding up order has been passed or a provisional liquidator has been appointed, and if no suit or other legal proceedings shall be commenced, or if pending at the date of winding out order shall be proceeded with against the company, except with the leave of tribunal, and this application to the tribunal seeking such leave shall be disposed of by the tribunal within. We have discussed that again, so it has to be disposed of within 60 days. Within 60 days. In what circumstances the tribunal may transfer the work assigned to the provisional liquidator, as the case may be, company liquidator to another liquidator. So on the deaths, on the removal, on the resignation, death, removal, resignation. I think these are very three natural reasons. So any of the above, which is the correct answer. Who shall make an application to the tribunal for constitution of the winding up committee? So obviously the winding up committee will consist of, the three people. And who will make an application? The company liquidator will make an application. Who may be appointed as provisional liquidator or company liquidator by the tribunal? We know that only one person can be appointed, that is the insolvency professional registered under IBBI. Option 1. Yes, Kaushiki, 21 is 2 and 22 is 1. What is the time limit? Sorry. Which of the following is not a content of the report submitted by the company liquidator? Which is not a content, remember, which is not a content. Amount of capital issued, nature and details of the assets, location of the assets. I think first, second, third, all three are content. So answer is fourth. What is the time limit within which the entire proceeding shall be completed and company may dissolve after submission of report by the company liquidator? So what is the time limit for this whole process? So nowhere I think we have mentioned about there was a discussion about time limit, remember. So the time limit will be fixed by the tribunal. Time limit will be fixed by the tribunal. Winding up committee shall comprise of the following person, namely, official liquidator attached to tribunal, nominee of secured creditors, professional nominated by the tribunal. No, Janvi, I think it's not 180 days. I think we have not discussed that point about 180 days. It is a time limit fixed by the tribunal. So I think 25 is very clear. All of the people will be the part of the winding up committee. Let us move on. With the new provisions, very technical provisions, it will require concentration from all of us. Where we have to understand certain important points with respect to the role of liquidator now. Role of liquidator. Now, what is the role of liquidator? The first role is to decide the order of payment, which has been given under section 326 and 327. So we need to make the payment as per section 326 and 327. And then we have to concentrate on recovery of asset. We have to concentrate on recovery of assets of certain kind of transactions. So that is covered under 328, 329, 332, and 333. These are the six sections which are very important and has to be understood. If any technical question will come, that will come primarily from these six questions. These six questions. Now, we all understand the whole purpose of winding up will be to collect the assets, sell the assets, recover the amount, and make the payment to the creditors. Creditors will include secured, unsecured, and normal creditors, which will include government dues, employees, and everything. So if you have studied the IBC section, IBC provision, recall that no, Janvi, 324, 325 are not relevant. They are not relevant. So if you recall section 53, or if you are not studied, then there is one section in IBC code 53, which is also depicting or showing or actually giving directions in the case of liquidation of a company, how the payment or waterfall mechanism of payment will be made. Under winding up, that same provision has been taken with a twist. So here also there has been a mechanism has been defined, but there is certain changes, which is a bit complicated, not as simple as under IBC. So first section is 326, which talks about overriding preferential payment. Overriding preferential payment. That means this particular provision will override any other section. Will override any other section. That means the first payment has to be done from under section 326. Thereafter, we have to check for cost of winding up, and then the preferential payments which has been given under 327. And then we have the debenture secured by floating charge, and then the balance unsecured creditors. So let us discuss each section. The first is overriding preferential payment. Overriding preferential payment. It says that the first payment which has to be made is towards workmen dues. That is part A. Then part B is a bit complicated, which says that where a secured creditor has realized a secured asset, so much of the debts due to such creditor as could not be realized by him, or the amount of workman portion in his security, whichever is less, pari passu with workman dues. Now again, workman dues is mentioned here, workman dues is mentioned here also. Pari passu with workman dues. Now obviously, from here what we understand Debts paid in priority is workman dues. And here, this will be such workman dues which is a balance left after this payment. Mancha, that is with respect to that is with respect to IBC. Yes, so that is with respect to IBC. That if there's a section which is mentioned under Companies Act, so why not apply the provisions of Companies Act towards IBC? So Supreme Court has held that the provisions of Companies Act will not apply, get preferential payment under IBC, because under IBC, preferential payment has been given to workman dues. So we'll explain, we'll understand what does this mean. First, let us understand. Furthermore, provided that in the case of winding up of a company, the sum referred to in clause 1 and 2 of clause B in the explanation, which are payable for a period of 2 years preceding the winding up order or such other period as may be prescribed, shall be paid in priority to all other debts, including debts due to secured creditors, within a period of 30 days of the sale of asset, and shall be subject to such charge over the security of the secured creditors as may be prescribed. Now, simple meaning would be that the workman compensation will be paid for a period of 2 years. Workman compensation will be paid for a period of 2 years, which are payable for a period of 2 years preceding the winding up order. Now, what is that date of winding up order? The date on which the provisional liquidator is appointed, or the date on which the company liquidator is appointed. So it says that the workman dues, which is paid till 2 years, first point. Very important, try to understand. And for the purpose of this section, workmen will have the same meaning as defined under Industrial Dispute Act, and workmen dues will consist of all wages and salaries, including wages payable for the time being or piecework and salary earned wholly or in part by way of commission of any workman in respect of services rendered under this Industrial Dispute Act, all accrued holiday remuneration becoming payable to any workman in the case of his death or to any person in his right on the termination of his employment. And all sum due to any workman from Provident Fund, Pension Fund, Gratuity Fund for the welfare of the workman. So primarily, the workman is defined. Try to understand. First, workman is defined as per Industrial Dispute Act. Second, what will be included in that workman dues, that has been defined, which is simple, no confusion. Third, time limit of that workman dues is defined. That is 2 years. That is 2 years. Under clause A. Under clause A. Now the question comes in, what is going to happen towards secured creditor? Towards secured creditor. So I'll take one example so that things are clear. Value of secured assets, 200 lakhs. Workman dues less than 2 years, 25 lakhs. Workman dues outstanding more than 2 years, 20 lakhs. Great. Secured creditor, 250 lakhs. Now, how this will be calculated? How this will be calculated? Let us take a look. In simple meaning, the first payment will be made to workman dues less than 2 years, 25 lakhs, which is sufficient enough to pay off from the value of realization. So 25 lakhs gone. Balance left is 175. Now this 175 consists of, that is to be paid towards secured creditors, and the dues to workmen which are more than 2 years, that is 20 lakhs. So they will be ranked pari passu. That is the it will be ranked pari passu with the workman dues. Which workman dues? The one which has been left after this amount. This amount means 2 years. Now after 2 years will come here, but this will be ranked pari passu with respect to the amount to be paid to the secured creditor. Now here the secured creditor is 250 lakhs, but because there is a workman due which is to be paid, that is 20 lakhs. So we will do a proportionate calculation. 20 upon 270. 20 upon 270. How come 270? 20 plus 250. So 20 upon 270 into 175. 250 upon 270 to 270 into 175. This is the amount to be paid to workmen and secured creditors. Any confusion out here? Please raise your doubt in this simple calculation. In this simple calculation. Now, I will move ahead and do one more complicated thing. Is to understand this provision where a secured creditor has realized a secured asset. So much of the debts due to such secured creditor as could not be realized by him, or the amount of the workman portion in his security, whichever is less, pari passu with workman dues. Now, under this example, there was no such criteria where I had given you the fact that the bank has realized something from the assets which have been part of his security. So if that happens, probably our overall calculation would change. Now, what does this calculation means? Suppose the debt due to the bank is, let's say, 4 lakhs. Is 4 lakhs. And the bank has a security. To make it simpler, we'll take it 3 lakh. Secured creditor and workman, 1 lakh. And this is the value of security. 1 lakh. So the amount due to secured creditor is 3 lakh. Workman is 1 lakh. And the security held by the secured creditor is 1 lakh. Now suppose the secured creditor sells this 1 lakh value of asset. Now as per this act, whatever amount is realized, whether by the liquidator or by anyone else, so here the amount has been realized by the secured creditor, then the first payment will be made to the the workman dues. Now here the question comes in, how much this will be from this particular amount of 1 lakh, how much amount will be paid to the workmen? Because this is a security which belongs to the secured creditor. So the secured creditor will obviously say that why should I pay this amount, pay some amount from this particular 1 lakh? But as per the law, they have to give a particular portion of the amount which is realized from the security to the workmen. So what we will do, we'll do one calculation. We will segregate this into 2 parts based on this ratio. Based on this ratio. Based on this ratio. And this ratio is in the ratio of 75 and 25. 75 and 25. I hope it is clear. 75 and 25. So 75,000 and 25,000. 25,000 will be paid to the workman. 75,000 will go to the secured creditor. 75,000 will go to the secured creditor. And 25,000 will go to the workman. Now, secured creditor will have a balance of what? 225. And workman will have a balance of 75,000. So what does the law says? The law says, first you pay to the workman dues. Fine. But if a secured creditor has realized a secured asset, it has realized a secured asset, that is 1 lakh. So much of the debts due to such secured creditor as could not be realized by him, that is 2,25,000. Or the amount of workman portion in his security. So what is the amount of workman portion in his security? That is 25,000. In his security, he has paid 25,000 to the workman. Whichever is less, pari passu with workman dues. Pari passu with workman dues. So that has to be paid in this particular priority. That means, what is the amount which has not been realized? 2,25,000. That is the amount which has not been realized. Or 25,000, which has been paid by the secured creditor as per the law. So 25,000, whichever is less. So 25,000 is less amount. So that will be considered in the second priority payment along with workman dues. Along with workman dues, which is still to be paid. The balanced workman dues, which is still to be paid. That means for the next payment, whatever is going to be realized by the liquidator, now that has to be paid to the secured creditor and the workman dues. So workman dues is now 75,000 which is balance left, and secured creditor 25,000. So in this ratio, the next amount will be distributed. Because 25,000 is what has been taken away from the secured creditor out of the money which has been realized by them. So now this will be granted to them along with the workman dues. And in this proportion, the next amount will be distributed. I hope this calculation is clear. No, it will matter. Janvi, it will matter. The first priority is 2 lakh. No, Namrata, it is not considered as unsecured. That will be considered as secured, but that might come under the next section, preferential payment. So the purpose of bringing in this particular provision is basically overriding preferential payment is to the workmen. See, the whole purpose of creating this section is calculation of the workman amount. There is no such mention of payment to the secured creditor. But here the whole purpose of bringing in this section is the amount to be paid to the workmen. I hope this 326 is clear that why this section has been introduced. Because this is a complicated calculation and you never know if a practical question comes in is of the amount to be paid to the workmen, then it should be very clear. Now this particular calculation will only come into picture when the secured creditor has realized certain assets. In our example, there was no such assets which was lying with the secured creditor. So it was plain vanilla question. Amount to be distributed first to the workman dues and thereafter whatever is left to the secured creditor and to the workmen, that will be paid in proportion. I hope the calculation is clear. If not, I can repeat the calculation once again. So this is overriding preferential payment, OPP. Overriding preferential payment, OPP, remember. And OPP talks about, okay. So let's say 1 lakh has been distributed, 75,000 to 25,000, that is clear. Thereafter, what is going to happen? This 75,000 has been taken away by secured creditor. Now out of 3 lakh, which is to be paid to the secured creditor, it has already taken 75,000. So balance left is 2,25,000. Now workmen is 1 lakh, which was to be paid. Now out of this 1 lakh, they have received 25,000. This 1 lakh is the balance which is left after whatever is there. Suppose, for example, the liquidator had about 1 lakh of rupees and total claim of the workman was 2 lakh. Now liquidator has paid 1 lakh towards workman dues. Still there is 1 lakh pending. Now there are certain assets which are lying with the secured creditor, and now the secured creditor are selling those assets. Now if that amount is realized, out of that realization, 25,000 given to the workman. Now workman balance is 75,000. Secured creditor balance is 2,25,000. Till now it is clear. Now it is said, if any further payment has to be made, that will be made in proportion to the secured creditor and the workman. That is fine. We agree that, okay, now the payment will be made in proportion. But what is that proportion that we are calculating? So the proportion is defined that 75,000 is balance left to the workman. And what will be the proportion of the secured creditor? So the proportion of secured creditor will be 25,000, which is nothing that but the amount which was paid by the secured creditor after realization of asset towards the workman. So to that proportion, for that purpose, this proportion is being calculated. That is now in the ratio of 3:1. 3:1. The payment, whatever is will be paid, that will be made in this proportion of 3:1. So now further, if let's say 5 lakh is realized, out of 5 lakh, 4 lakh will go towards workmen and 1 lakh will go towards secured creditor now. Yes, Namrata, assets is realized by secured creditor and creditors generate cash. Janvi, is it clear now? After paying 75,000, see, logically speaking, the proportion should be on 225 and 75. No, we are not taking whatever is outstanding to the secured creditor. We are taking only 25,000 for calculating the proportion. So 25,000 and 75,000. But what is left to the secured creditor is 2,25,000. But for calculation of the proportion, we are taking only 25,000. So as I said, law at times becomes so complicated just because of the wordings. Maybe that would not have been the intention of the lawmaker, but the wordings of that particular section has made it a bit complicated. So the next proportion will be 75,000, 25,000, not 75,000 and 2,25,000. It is just to safeguard all the workmen, because 326, as I said, is purely a section which will guide us of payment to be made to workmen, not to the secured creditor. Next, we come to the preferential payment. Why 25,000? Because that is what the law says, the section says. The law says, where a secured creditor has realized, first is debts paid in priority, workmen dues. Second, again, debts paid in priority. That is the second. If you read the section, this is part A and this is part B. So where a secured creditor has realized a secured asset, that means he has sold certain assets. So much of the debts due to such creditor as could not be realized by him. That is 2,25,000 was not realized by him. Or the amount of workman portion in his security. See, the amount of workman portion in his security is 25,000, because 1 lakh he realized, and out of that 1,25,000 was paid to the workman. Whichever is less, that is 25,000 is less, will rank pari passu with the workman dues. So 25,000 and workman dues 75,000. This will be used for calculation of the pari passu charge. I hope it is clear, Priyal. Next, we come to 327, that is preferential payment. So it's all about mathematics coming from law, which is a strange combination. Mathematics coming from law, strange combination. Preferential payment. The next comes in order: equal rank government dues, payable less than 12 months, employee salary from a particular relevant date, and investigation expenses under section 213 and 216. They will rank equally. So obviously, government dues have been defined, employee salary has been defined, relevant date has been defined, investigation expenses have been defined. So for employee salary, all wages, salary, important part. Services rendered to the company and due for a period not exceeding 4 months within the 12 month immediately before the relevant date. So the payment will be made of not more than 4 months within the last 12 months. So the time period which will be taken is 12 months, but the payment will be made only for 4 months. Why this is so? There might be a situation where the person might have left and rejoined. So under that scenario, we are taking a time period of 12 months, but maximum salary 4 months. So wages and salary and all contributions made toward the ASIC and PF and so on. Relevant date means in the case of company being wound up, the date of appointment of first appointment of provisional liquidator. And if no appointment was made, the date of winding up order. So that is the relevant date. So that was about employee. Relevant date, clear. Government dues, which are payable in less than 12 months. And investigation. Then payment of debt. They will rank equally among themselves and to be paid in full. And if the amount is not, assets are not enough, then they will be paid in equal proportion. Example. This is the amount due. Amount realized is 80 lakhs from the sale of asset. Calculate the amount to be paid to each of the claimant as per Companies Act. So as the amount is 80 lakhs, the first payment will be made to worker, 25 lakhs under section 326. Then the balance payment will be made to secured creditor. And thereafter, because there is no such amount left, so no further payment will be made. no further payment will be made. Another example, amount of 30,000 due to an employee for 8 months out of last 12 months. So how much to be paid? Maximum it is 4 months. So out of 30,000, we'll take only 15,000. Amount of 1,50,000 towards gratuity payment, whole amount 1,50,000. 1,50,000. That has to be taken. Whatever amount is towards contribution of PF, pension fund, and gratuity fund, that has to be taken. I hope this calculation is clear. Please raise your point if you have any. Namrata, pari passu means we will consider both together, that they will be paid in proportionate. Namrata, they will be paid in proportionate along with the other parties. Janvi, if further asset is available, what will be the order of payment? So the order of payment obviously first will be through secured creditor, whatever the balance is left. Thereafter, the income tax dues, the trade creditors, and unsecured loan to directors in same proportion. Income tax dues, government dues within the last 1 year, unsecured loan to directors, from directors, it should not be to directors, but from directors, and trade creditors for material in proportion. Shriram, if you see the example, employee due will include wages, salary, all accrued holiday remuneration, all contribution under EISIC, all sum due to an employee from the provident fund, pension fund, and gratuity fund. So if 1,50,000 is towards gratuity, that will be part of this particular calculation. So salary will include this amount. I hope it is clear. So overall 326 is a complicated one. 327 is very simple, where they are giving equal rank to each of the payment towards government dues, employee salary, investigation expenses. Next, we come to fraudulent preference. Now, what is fraudulent preference? Now, from the word we understand, that there is a preference given to few people. There's a preference given to few people. To whom? To one of the creditors of the company. Or a surety or a guarantor for any of the debts or liabilities of the company. So one is purely who is associated with the company, and second who is indirectly associated with the company. So what kind of preference is given? What kind of preference is given? So here a direct theory question will come. You just need to remember this specific transaction. So where there is a transfer of property, movable or immovable, or any delivery of goods or payment, three kind of preference. Three kind of preferences. Transfer of property, movable or immovable, or any delivery of goods or payment. Time period is execution made, taken or done by against a company within 6 months before making a winding up application. Remember, 6 months before making a winding up application. So where there is an execution of transfer of property, delivery of goods taken or done, or payment be given, then the outcome is that tribunal may order the restoration of such transaction. Tribunal may order the restoration of such transaction. Example. Horizontal Limited was ordered to be wound up compulsory by a petition filed on 10th February 2019. It's from the filing of petition, not from the date of order. After the liquidator takes possession of the assets and the other records of the company, he notices that the managing director of the company has transferred certain properties belonging to the company to one of its creditors, Vertical Private Limited, in which his son was interested. And this particular transaction was causing huge monetary loss to the company. The sale took on 15 September 2018. Examine what action the official liquidator can take in this matter, having regard to the provisions of fraudulent preference. So because there is a transfer of property to one of the creditors of the company, which might not have been done in the normal course of business. That is the crux. Which might not have been done in the normal course of business. So, an application will be made to the tribunal by the liquidator, asking the tribunal that the original transaction, the original status may be restored. So, tribunal, after examining the transaction, may order that the Vertical Limited hand over those properties back to Horizontal Limited. So any such preference has been given to any of its creditors or to a surety or guarantor for any of the debts or the liabilities of the company. Suppose the company has taken a loan, and for that loan, somebody has given a guarantee. It may be a director or a third party. And when the directors or the promoters feel that the company may be wound up, so what do? To safeguard that particular guarantor, they may transfer certain assets of the company to that guarantor. Because you have given a guarantee, so to safeguard your guarantee, because the company would be wound up and there might be default by the company towards the bankers, so they transfer certain property in the name of the guarantor. So that particular transaction can be treated as a fraudulent preference. I hope this transaction is clear. What does fraudulent preference means? Another example where a modern technology has incurred huge losses during the last 3 years and its financial position was bad. The company created mortgage on some of its immovable properties in favor of the bank in the hope that by keeping good faith with the bank, it could get further advances and the same could be utilized to revive the company. Creditors filed a winding up petition. The court passed an order of winding up on the 1st August. Answer the following with the reference to the provision of the Companies Act. That means whether this particular mortgage, which was created in the favor of bank, on the hope that the bank would give further advances, on the hope that the bank would give further advances so that they can recover. Whether that could be treated as fraudulent preference or not. Whether that could be treated as fraudulent preference or not. First is time period, obviously. The application was filed under 15 January and the transaction was done in September 2018. So definitely it falls within the criteria of 6 months. But the challenge comes in whether that could be treated as a preferential treatment to one of its bankers. Now that's always a debatable point because you have transferred or created a mortgage on the hope that they would give further advances. But the banker did not give. So indirectly, we can always treat it as a fraudulent preference because you have transferred certain assets in the favor of a creditor or created a mortgage in the favor of a creditor, but then there was no outcome of that particular transaction. No outcome of the particular transaction, and the liquidator may file an application. Namrata, both are the same thing, not a problem. Both are the same person. Under the Contract Act is referred to as a surety. Void transfer. What is void transfer? Transfers which are accepted. So any transfer of property, movable or delivery of goods, transfer or delivery made in the ordinary course of business. Ordinary course of business. Fine. And any transfer of property, movable or delivery of goods in favor of a purchaser or encumbrance in good faith and for valuable consideration. And for valuable consideration. So here, these are the transfers which are accepted. Transfers which are accepted. Apart from this, any transfer which does not fall under these two categories will be void transfers. Will be void transfer. So again, for example, selling X, but you are selling capital goods. Normally you sell product X, but you sell capital goods. which is not in the ordinary course of business. A very valid question. See, when something is encumbered, that means it is not freely available. There is some restriction. So encumbered assets, those are assets which are held by bank due to, legal or regulatory or certain limitation. Those assets which do not have free movement. So those are known as encumbered assets. There are certain legal restrictions on the transfer. So when there are no legal restrictions, for example, cash, stocks, investments, these are all unencumbered assets, provided they are not used as a security for taking a loan. So wherever there is a restriction, that is encumbered. What is clear? In case of void transfers, will there also be any time period to consider? No such time period has been given. No such time period has been given. So transfer between related party, transaction between related party, 30 lakh of stock sold at 25 lakh. So these are certain examples of transfers, transactions which could be treated as void, And if these are void transactions, what is going to happen? So again, the liquidator will make an application. And the original state will be restored. So let us see what is going to happen. Liabilities and the rights of person fraudulently preferred. So let's say there's a company, there's a fraudulent preference to a creditor, which is treated as invalid. Then there will be restoration of that particular transaction. To what extent? Let's say to the extent of value which of mortgage is created or to the value of interest which is created, whichever is lower. Now this is a specific example of where a fraudulent preference has been given to a creditor or a person who is a guarantor, then in that case, whatever is the value of mortgage which is created or value of interest which has been transferred, whichever is lower, to that extent, the amount will be restored. That is very logical. Suppose the loan amount is 1 crore, but we have transferred property worth 50 lakhs to that particular guarantor. So obviously, I will not ask 1 crore from that particular guarantor because that is the value of mortgage created. No, I will only ask to the extent of 50 lakhs. I will only make an application to the extent of 50 lakhs in tribunal for restoration. For restoration. Amount outstanding as on 31/7/2020 is 20 lakhs. Property transferred is 18 lakhs as on 1/3/2020. Company admitted for winding up as on 31/7/2020. Whether is it fraudulent preference? The answer is yes. We have transferred a property of 18 lakhs, which has happened 6 months prior to this particular transaction. Can it be void? Yes. What is the implication of 331? The implication of 331 is that there will be a restoration. Restoration to what extent? Whether 20 lakhs or 18 lakhs? That is the answer. That is the question. So restoration application will be filed to the extent of 18 lakhs, not 20 lakhs. Yes, Kaushiki, what we are trying to understand, when you ask that void transfers, the time period will be 6 months. Now, there are two separate sections. One section is talking about fraudulent preference. What is the definition of fraudulent preference? Now, those fraudulent preference transactions, can they be treated as void or not? That is the void transfers. So indirectly, void transfer will cover a time period of 6 months. So void transfers are all, fraudulent preference are part of void transfers. So any fraudulent preference will be part of void transfers. Any transaction which is not done in the ordinary course of business, creating a fraudulent preference will be a void transfer. So that means the whole understanding is that if a fraudulent preference has been done, if a preference has been done, and if it is made in the ordinary course and in good faith and for valuable consideration, these are accepted transfers. But if these preferences do not fall under these categories, they will be treated as fraudulent preference and void. And void means, that means an application will be made for restoration of the original transaction. Is this clear? Floating charge. Another very important concept. So remember what we have studied so far: overriding preferential payment, then fraudulent preference, void transfers. These are all new terminology which has come in front of you. All these are new terminologies which have come in front of you for the first time, which are altogether different from whatever we have studied or you must have studied if under IBC. Under IBC, there are no such terms of floating charge, though there are references of preferential transactions, which are of the same nature as mentioned, as discussed here under fraudulent preference. Now, what is floating charge? A floating charge is created, that is the action taken by the company, within 12 months preceding the winding up. The purpose of creating this section, bringing this section, is to prevent an insolvent company to create a charge on the assets on any past debt for which money has not come. That is, again, there is no such valuable consideration. So this is again one of the void transfers. The outcome is that the company shall, unless it is proved that the company immediately after creation of charge was solvent, be invalid except for the amount of any cash paid to the company at the time or subsequent to the creation, and in consideration for the charge, together with interest on that amount at the rate of 5% per annum, or such other rate as may be notified by the government. That means if any floating charge is created on any of the assets, and the date on which the charge was created, it is proved that the company was solvent, then it is fine. But if it was insolvent, and a charge is created with no further extension of loan, then along with that amount, a 5% interest on either rate which is notified by the central government will be paid or restored. So it is a very simple example. Let's say whether it is void or not. If there is an old loan, and if a new charge is created, it is a void transaction. If it's a solvent company, not at all a problem. If it's a new loan and loan plus 5% is acceptable. If it's an insolvent and a new loan plus 5%, then it is fine. But if it is old loan and if a new charge is created, a floating charge is created, it will be void. Let us see an example. A company created a floating charge on its current assets in the favor of a bank to secure a current account which was in debit of 5 lakhs and also to secure further working capital facility provided by the bank. The charge created on 1st January and was duly registered. The bank advanced 10 lakhs subsequent to the creation of charge. The company has gone into voluntary liquidation. Examine the validity of floating charge, but there is no fraudulent preference. So there was no fraudulent preference here. It was purely done in the ordinary course of business. And on the date of the charge creation, there's no mention of the status of the company, whether it was insolvent or solvent. So assuming it was insolvent, because there's a debit of 5 lakhs in the current account, we assume it is insolvent. But subsequent to the charge creation, there is an advancement given of 10 lakhs by the bank, which means there is a consideration received in creation of the charge. But the extent of interest which will be charged is only 5%, not beyond that. So if something is charged beyond 5%, that will not be accepted. That will be rejected. Suppose in a scenario where there was no extra facility given, step 1, old loan, 5 lakhs. Step 2, new loan, yes, 10 lakhs has been given. Solvent, not solvent, but insolvent. So insolvent, new loan, limitation of interest. Insolvent, old loan, no new loan, void. Solvent, all things acceptable. All things acceptable. So this is all about floating charge. Floating charge, section 332. Section 332. Yes, Shriram, floating charge is a charge created on all the assets. Yes, Kaushiki, you are right that transferred 18 lakhs on the loan outstanding of 20 lakhs, which is less than, it's a valuable consideration. But here the scenario was that loan was already there. After the loan was taken, there was a property transfer. If the property was transferred for taking a loan, then we would have accepted it. But because the property was transferred after the loan was sanctioned, that means it was not part of the original transaction. It became part subsequent. That is why it is treated as a fraudulent preference. I hope it is clear. Understood. So floating charge, there is no such transfer out here, remember. How is it different from the previous section? In the previous section, there was a transfer of a property. But here, there is no such transfer of property, but we are creating a floating charge. We are not transferring, we are just creating a charge on the assets. So there have been few questions asked in the exams based on all these concepts. So out of the blue, they just put in one question with the technicalities involved. As I said, there are not many case studies available. So they would create a hypothetical situation within the provisions of this law. And it will be a direct application of the section. So don't need to worry. If you remember these sections, it will be very easy for you to score marks. Now another term, onerous property. So some properties are encumbered, unencumbered, onerous. Now what are onerous properties? Now there might be certain properties where there are certain encumbrances attached. And because of those encumbered nature of assets, where there are certain restrictions, the liquidator may not be able to sell those assets. Or even if it feels that the assets could be sold because of restrictions, the value of the assets could be less. The cost of selling such assets or carrying those assets might be heavy. more than the value which they will be able to realize from those assets. So these type of assets or properties may be termed as onerous property, where the liquidator feels that there is no such value proposition coming out of those assets. Therefore, I should disown those assets. I should disown those assets. I should disclaim those assets, that I don't want those assets to be part of my state. So examples, there could be land of any tenure burdened with onerous covenants, shares or stocks in companies, any other property which is not sellable, is not readily sellable by reason of the possessor thereof being bound either to the performance of any onerous act or the payment of sum of money, or it may be unprofitable. So there may be certain scenarios, covenants attached to those properties, which makes it very difficult for you to sell and realize the amount. So what does the liquidator has to do? He has to apply to the tribunal for disclaiming those properties, leave of disclaimer by NCLT. He has to apply to NCLT that after preparation of report, remember 281 report he has prepared, and he comes to know of certain properties where he feels that it is not worth holding those assets. Therefore, I may apply within 12 months after the commencement or extended period that I do not want these properties from my state. Please take away. The NCLT, after receiving such application, before giving the granting the leave to disclaim, may send notices to all the parties interested, and then after hearing them, make an appropriate order. Now there could be another scenario, which is a tricky one, where an interested party who believes that there is an asset where there is certain covenant or encumbrance, and where he is a party or affected party, he may apply to the company liquidator and ask him, please decide whether you want to disclaim or not to disclaim that property. Then the company liquidator, within 28 days, he has to give a notice to that interested party whether he wants to disclaim. And if he fails to reply, he will never be able to disclaim that property in times to come. So there are two ways. One is voluntary by the liquidator. The second is by the interested party, when he wants to be sure that whether this property will be taken by the liquidator or not, because he has to take certain decision. Therefore, he may also apply to the liquidator that please decide and let me know what you're doing with this particular property so that I also can take certain steps. So an example is there's a liability of 3 crore, asset value is 2 crore. So let's say for that value of 2 crores, there is a liability, there's a covenant attached that until you don't make this 3 crore payment, this property cannot be released. So to realize that value of 2 crore, I have to make a 3 crore payment. Why should a liquidator do like that? Therefore, he would be interested in disowning that property, but is not voluntarily applying. The party has issued a letter on 15/12/2020, and the liquidator has to reply. The liquidator replies on 15 March 2021. Therefore, the time limit of 28 days has passed by. Therefore, he loses the right to disclaim that property. That means he has to take that property in his estate, and whatever liability attached to that estate, he has to pay it and then realize that amount. So at times it may be a a catch-22 situation for that particular liquidator, because he may not be aware what are the facts behind that property, and by that time he understands, the application is made and the time limit goes by, and then you are caught on the wrong foot. So now we understand the job of liquidator is very tough, friends. Very tough to carry on the proceedings of liquidation, winding up. So application of person who is entitled to benefit of the contract made with the company. An application may be made by a person who is entitled to a benefit of a contract made with the company. So there's a contract, let's say, which is outstanding with the company, and the person is a beneficiary of that contract. That person may make an application for cancelling that contract on such terms as to make the payment or to pay the damages, or whatever the tribunal may consider just and proper. So there's a provision that when the company, let's say company goes under winding up, and the person who are executing those contracts, if they think that they may not be interested in completing that contract because they know if they go ahead with the contract, their money might get stuck. So it is better to rescind the contract, cancel the contract, and if there's a damage to be paid, they may pay for the damages for the non-performance of the contract, or they may apply to the tribunal, and whatever the tribunal may consider just and proper, and the tribunal may order certain damages. So that is also possible. That is very logical to give an option to the people who are associated with the company, entered into a long-term contract. If they want to exit that contract, that option is given. So friends, these are few provisions with respect to the winding up provision, where the liquidator has to identify these transactions, Therefore, I had segregated these into two parts. Once again, yes, on the priority of order of payment, and the second is recovery of assets or transaction in case of floating charge or void transfer, fraudulent preference, and so on. And then we have a separate section of onerous property. So if you have any doubts till now, you can raise your point. Otherwise, we'll take a break and then we'll come back and recover the balance, smaller tidbits of winding up. And if required, we'll cover the questions also, few multiple choice questions, and then wind up this winding up topic. Janvi has raised a point. Suppose the bank liability is 3 crores and the asset value, which is also provided as securities bank, is 2 crores. See, Janvi, the owner's property has to be taken from the point of view of the liquidator. It is not about bank liability. That is basically a creditor. and the security value is 2 crore. That cannot be treated as onerous property. Onerous properties may be those properties where the realization of 2 crores is subject to that I make a payment of 3 crores to someone, because there are certain tags attached to that particular property. Maybe I have to demolish something on that particular land or property before I could sell that land. And that demolition cost would be very heavy, which is more than the value of the property. Right? It is not about creating a mortgage and there's a liability against that particular property. There's no such liability out of that owner's property. What I am trying to say is that there are certain points or certain conditions attached to the relation of the value of that particular asset. So until unless I don't do those transactions, I would not be able to realize that amount. And cost of doing those transactions is more than the value of the property. So those could be termed as onerous property. I hope it is clear. Anandi, difficult question. It all depends upon how do you prepare in yourself. So maybe that's a separate question to be asked separately. Obviously, I can answer it, but not as a part of this particular content delivery. Janvi, I hope I have cleared your doubt. Property mortgage against bank loan, they cannot be onerous, but to sell, to realize that 2 crores, I have to take certain actions for which the cost will be borne. Then it could be treated as onerous property. So we take a break, a short break, and then restart. Till the time you can review, understand what has been discussed so far, so that we can take it further. Should I start? Okay. So let us go ahead and first complete, and if time permits, we'll try to again recollect certain important points, though not much left in this particular winding up provisions except for smaller sections. Now, certain offenses which are recognized under this particular winding up. Offenses committed by officers of the company in liquidation. That is what we need to understand. So if you see, the major challenge in offenses is to, first, what is the amount of penalty? And second is for what? Now, amount of penalty is obviously very difficult because there are so many penalties. But for what, we can obviously visualize and then recall that what could be the possible reasons for the penalty. So in case of liquidation, what could be the possible reasons? So let's say the liquidator has to perform certain actions. So if you do, if any steps you take which are not supporting the liquidator, that could be one possible reason. So liquidator has to compile all the assets. So anything which is related to assets, anything which is related to company, that means assets, books and papers, no delivery of information, material omissions, books or prevents the production of any book or paper, fictitious loss, expenses, false representation. This is all relation to your books of accounts. This is in relation to assets. So majorly assets and wrong information. Conceals any property or fraudulently removes any part of the property. That is also important. Privy to the making of false entry, fraudulently parts with alters or makes any omission in books or paper, false representation, or the fraud obtains in credit. Pledges, dispose of any property which has been obtained on credit and has not been paid for. So many things, but primarily what we need to understand is in relation to these matters. Obviously, I'm not going to technicality of each point because these are self-explained, nothing to be further elaborated. And obviously, from exam point of view, a limited chance of being asked in the exams. What is the fine? That is important. The fine is imprisonment not less than 3 years, but extend to 5 years. And not less than 1 lakh, but it may extend to 3 lakhs. This is again important part where statement of being wound up, the tribunal, whenever the tribunal gives in winding up order, then every invoice, order for goods or business letter issued by or on behalf of the company, a company liquidator of the company, a receiver, manager of property of the company, it should disclose. It should disclose that the company is in liquidation. This is important. That means in every communication, it should be explicitly mentioned that the company is in the liquidation. And if somebody violates that, the liquidator or any receiver who permits this non-compliance shall be punishable. So this is basically to make people aware that you are dealing with a company which is under liquidation. Now, contributory and traders, can they inspect the books of accounts? Remember, there were certain provisions which we have discussed yesterday, day before yesterday, where they can go and inspect the books of accounts, the creditors and contributors. So under 346, they have the right to inspect the books of accounts. Now, this is again an important part where we need to understand what is going to happen in case of company going under liquidation and there is some dividend to be paid, or there is an amount which we are not able to pay because of lack of information. And it may happen practically, and practically happens in many cases, especially in case of dividend distribution where there are shareholders are not traceable, accounts not traceable. Then what do we do with such kind of amounts? So important from exam perspective. This is a relevant question. Dividends does not mean the normal dividend. Dividends means anything which is to be paid. That is a dividend, which has been remained unpaid for 6 months, after which they were declared. Any assets refundable to any contributory which have been remained undistributed for 6 months from the date from which they become refundable. What they will do, so its time period is 6 months, remember. The liquidator shall forthwith deposit the said money into separate special account. So a separate account has to be opened, known as company liquidation dividend and undistributed asset account. Along with the transferring the amount, he shall include the names and address, the last known address of all these persons to whom this amount was to be paid. This is the step to be taken by the liquidator. Now the job shifts to the person who wants to claim on that amount. He has to apply to the registrar, and the payment will be done after the registrar verifies the proof, and it has to be done within 60 days. That means now the payment will be made by registrar rather than the liquidator, because now liquidator's job is over. He has gone. He will not come back. Now, what is going to happen if nobody comes and claims that amount? So 15 years transferred to general revenue account of the central government. Very clear. Let us see. A Limited is getting wound up under section 271. It has a sum of 45 lakh which was deposited in company liquidation and distributed asset account. Mr. P was given the receipt. Mr. X applied to register on 1st October 2019. 12 lakh of such amount. After verifying the correctness, the same was settled on 12th November. Balance amount remained unclaimed for 15 years, hence transferred to the general account. To the central government, it was noted that a sum of 6 lakh was retained by Mr. P, which should have been deposited by him to company liquidation dividend account. Hence, interest at the rate of 15% was levied on Mr. P. State the correctness of the process of compliance in given situation. So, any liquidator retaining an amount which should have been paid by him into company liquidation and distributed asset account, he shall pay interest on the amount so retained at the rate of 12% per annum, and any such penalty determined by the registrar. So I hope this question is self-answered, because the rate of interest is wrongly mentioned. We just have to apply 12% along with the penalty which the registrar may impose. Mr. X is any person who thinks maybe a creator, maybe a banker, maybe an employee who failed to receive that particular amount, and maybe he came to know about all this process later on. Mr. T is appointed as a liquidator for carrying on the winding process. The company has been declared wound up on 162020. 2,50,000 represent the amount unpaid to creditors were not deposited into company liquidation dividend account until 30/9/2020 by Mr. T. What actions can be taken against Mr. T in the above mentioned situation? So again, principal amount plus 12% interest along with the penalty may be imposed by the registrar. But remember, in this process, what has happened? Only 3 months has passed by. Only 3 months. So straight away, don't jump to answers. Because there is a violation, so you will directly jump to the conclusion that he will be penalized. Please do always refer to the dates. So the amount can be retained for a period of 6 months, remember. So till the 6 months, there is no contravention. Till 6 months, there is no contravention. After that, you can apply that penal provision of 12% per annum. Then smaller provisions that liquidator has to file all the returns. So if he fails to file any return, give any notice, then on the application of any contributory creditor registrar, then within 14 days, notice will be given to the liquidator asking why is not fulfilling or not filing or delivering the documents. And obviously then the same will be decided by the court. Yes, this is again one of the important sections which we have read earlier about meetings to be held of the creditors or contributors, which we have already seen that if required, the creditors and contributors can call for a meeting and they can decide on a particular matter. And in case of conflict between the advisory committee and the wishes of creditors and contributors, the wishes will prevail over the advisory committee. So if the liquidator wants to ascertain the wishes of the creditors, then he can call the meeting of the creditors. He can appoint a person to act as a chairman and report the result thereof by voting. So obviously when I say wishes means the voting power of each of the particular creditor. Or the voting power of the contributory. Voting power in the sense to the extent of amount of debt in case of creditors, and for contributory it will be the number of votes, number of shares he held. On that basis we can ascertain the wishes. So that is again an important part. So this was all about winding up, friends. Let me again go back and then do a bit of calculation for all of you. You can take out a pen and paper and let us see how much you can do the calculation for preferential payment and overriding payments. Take out a pen and paper. I am raising certain questions. Let us do certain calculation. Amount to be distributed 10 lakhs. Workman compensation 5 lakh. Secured creditor, 3 lakh. Salary, 2 lakh. Government dues, less than 12 months, 2 lakhs. Work and compensation, less than 2 years. Yes, so can we have the answers? Yes, so we have the answers now. Okay. So Janvi has given 5 for workmen, 3 for secured creditor, and 1 for salary and government dues. Correct. Okay. So Viraj has given government due 2, secured 3, workmen 5, salary no balance left. So 5311. So the correct answer is 5311. 5311 is the correct answer. Correct. So Janvi and Priyal, you have mentioned it correctly. Shriram, you have not given the answer. Why? Because first is overriding preferential payment, workman, and then secured creditor. And thereafter it is salary, government dues, which will rank pari passu with each other, along with investigation expenses. They will go pari passu with each other. Another calculation, please. Amount is 10 lakhs. Amount is 10 lakhs. 1 second. Amount is 10 lakhs. Workman compensation, 3 lakhs. Less than 2 years. More than 2 years is 3 lakhs. Secured creditor is 3 lakhs. Winding up cost is 2 lakhs. How it is to be paid? Yes, Sriram, it was assumed to be for 4 months. Nothing is mentioned, it was assumed to be 4 months. Anybody else? Janvi has answered it. Okay, so workman compensation less than 2 years, 3 lakhs, first payment under section 326. Then April, it will be wrong. Then 3 lakhs and 3 lakhs to both the workman and the secured creditor. Then winding up cost of 1 lakh. Then winding up cost of 1 lakh. Then winding up cost of 1 lakh. This will be the waterfall mechanism. I'll just show you the waterfall mechanism. First is overriding preferential payment. Then we have the cost of winding up. Thereafter, preferential payment under 327. Then debentures secured by floating charge. Then unsecured creditors. This is the priority order. So overriding preferential payment, cost of winding up, preferential payments, debentures secured by floating charge, and then unsecured creditors. This will be the waterfall mechanism. And within this, remember preferential payment, first is salary of 4 months, then balance will come if something is left, then I'll give you one more example. Let's take one more example. Ten lakhs, workmen 1 lakh, secured creditor 2 lakh, salary less than 4 months 5 lakh, salary more than 4 months is 2 lakhs, unsecured creditors 2 lakhs. Yes. Can you give the answer? Can we have the answer, please? Workman compensation 1 lakh, secured creditor 2 lakhs, salary 5 lakhs less than 4 months, salary more than 4 months 2 lakhs, unsecured creditors 2 lakhs. Anybody else? Viraj has given the answer. I'll further elaborate on the answer. So obviously it is very clear. Workman compensation 1 lakh, secured creditor 2 lakhs, salary which is less than 4 months 5 lakhs, that is under 327. This is under 326. Thereafter, if total amount is 8 lakhs, 2 is left, what is the treatment of salary more than 4 months? Now, under 327, it is mentioned salary within less than 4 months. So if anything is above 4 months, that will be treated as unsecured creditor. They will be treated as unsecured creditor. So if they are unsecured creditor, so 2 lakhs and 2 lakhs will fall under the same category of same rank. So therefore, they will be treated in proportion, which is equal proportion. So 1 lakh and 1 lakh. 1 lakh and 1 lakh. I hope it is clear again. 1 lakh and 1 lakh. Another calculation, if you can just secured creditor 5 lakh, asset realized 2 lakh, asset realized 2 lakh, claim from workmen is 5 lakh, claim from workmen is 5 lakh. First, can you give me the calculation of what is the amount to be distributed by the secured creditor towards workmen? What is the amount to be distributed by the secured creditor towards workmen? So Janvi says 1 lakh, Priyal says 1 lakh, which is absolutely correct. Because if I see the proportion of secured creditor and workmen, that is 5 lakh and 5 lakh, that is equal proportion. So out of this 2 lakh, it will be segregated between these two in the ratio of 50-50. So 1 lakh and 1 lakh. So this is the value of security, value of amount to be paid to workmen compensation, which is included in the value of security. Value of amount to be paid to the workmen, which is included in the value of security. First part ends out here. Now, what is the amount left now? What is the amount left? Secured creditor, 5 minus 1, that is 4. Workmen, 5 minus 1, that is 4. This is the amount left. Now, suppose yes, correct. Out of this 4 lakh, let's say 2 lakhs is towards less than 2 years. 2 lakhs is less than 2 years. Yes, Janvi, just let me complete, then we can answer. 2 lakhs is for less than 2 years. And the amount which is left for distribution towards workmen compensation. So workmen compensation left is 2 lakhs. And the amount which is to be distributed is again 2 lakhs. So out of 4, 2 has gone. And out of workmen compensation also 2 has gone. So 2 is left. Now, how this 2 will be distributed? How this 2 will be distributed? That is important. How this 2 will be distributed? That is important. So, as we understand, whatever amount is now left, that will be distributed in the ratio of 4:1. 4:1. Because this amount 4 and the value of security, that was 1 lakh, or amount outstanding 4 lakh, 4 lakh and 1 lakh, whichever is lower. Remember that calculation? 4 lakh and 1 lakh, whichever is lower, that will be taken for calculation of proportion. So 1:4 or 4:1. In this ratio, the remaining amount will be distributed. In this ratio, the remaining amount will be distributed. Under ratio of 4:1, the remaining amount will be distributed. I hope it is clear. Under ratio 4:1, the remaining amount will be distributed. So that's again a typical calculation which you have to remember as per section 326. As per section 326. Let me take another example. Amount to be distributed. $10 lakhs. Amount to be distributed 10 lakhs. Winding up cost 2 lakhs. Winding up cost 2 lakhs. Salary 2 lakhs. Tax is 2 lakhs again. Tax is 2 lakhs again. Just 1 second. Creditors 2 lakhs. Creditors 2 lakhs. Now what will happen to this distribution? What will happen to this distribution? What will happen to the distribution? So we have 10 lakh to be distributed. 2 lakh for winding up, cost, salary, taxes, creditors. What will finally happen? Is anybody? Yeah, all amounts will be settled, balance 2 lakhs still remains as surplus. Is that the final answer, Sriram, Mr. Sriram? Is that the answer which you will mention in your answer sheet? Yes, Janvi, that's my question. So what is going to happen? How this will be distributed? 8 lakhs is fine. So is that your final answer? So friends, remember, if there is more surplus assets, less of liability, so the final 2 lakhs will be distributed to the shareholders, the contributories, the members. You cannot say it will be surplus. What you have to mention is 2 lakh will be distributed to the shareholders. You cannot finally say that 2 lakhs will be surplus. No, they are not surplus. They have to be distributed. The company has to be dissolved. So the shareholders will play, yes, the surplus will be distributed among shareholders. That is what you have to write. So remember, these are small finer points. Though we know that the 2 lakh will be obviously distributed, but you forget to write down. You just mentioned 2 lakhs is a surplus. So the mechanism should be very clear. Whatever is surplus, that has to be given to the shareholders. If there's a preference shareholder, first the preference shareholders will be paid, and thereafter the shareholders. And even if there's a shareholders with differential voting rights, based on the voting rights, the class of the shares, the amount will be distributed. Yes, it will be in the form of company liquidation dividend. Right. Yes, obviously, winding up cost will include liquidator salary. Winding up cost will include liquidator salary. Now, within this all these questions, there can be twists and turns. I'm not going into those twists and turns. We don't expect any technical calculation coming out of it. Basic calculation should be clear to all of you friends. How this payment mechanism has to be made, that should be clear. Which are the priority payments, except for one technical calculation of that surplus, the amount realized by the secured creditors. Except for that technical calculation, rest all calculations are very clear, and the waterfall mechanism is very clear. If there's an amount realized on occasion of what onerous property or restoration of any asset by a tribunal order, that will form part of the liquidation state, and that amount will also be distributed as per the waterfall mechanism. Right, friends? So I think this covers our overall winding up. Two parts, as we have all understood now, easy to be understood, except that there you have to learn, which we do. Learning is on your part. Our job is just to make you understand the process, certain important points. Obviously, definition of what is workman portion, what is workman, what are workman dues. I mean, these are certain things which you have to learn, and we cannot escape from all these smaller elements of passing the exams. So we have just explained in brief the overall concept. If you have any doubts, please raise your point. Otherwise, we'll just review those points for today and then wind up the class. So remember, we started with the liquidator role, where we had 326 as overriding preferential payment. After that, we have the cost of winding up. Thereafter, all the preferential payment under 327. Then under 327, there is mention of debentures secured by floating charge, and obviously unsecured creditors will come into picture. So under 327, 326, first is workman dues, which is less than 2 years. And thereafter, a certain calculation of the secured creditor and the workman dues. So it is mentioned in the proviso that the 2 years debt will be paid in first priority. And thereafter, the secured creditors and the workman portion, which is to be calculated, will be paid in pari passu. Then we have the preferential payment, where we have equal rank of government dues less than 12 months, employee salary 4 months from the relevant date, investigation expenses. Again, employee salary dues have been calculated. And then we have the fraudulent preferences, void transfers, and what is the result of those fraudulent preferences, floating charge, and onerous properties. These are 4 terms which you have to remember and recall. And then we started with the penal provisions and certain smaller provisions. Important one is the liquidation account, mentioning of the word in liquidation in every document. And that's all. So I hope this chapter is clear and you are ready to score those 4 to 6 marks. My suggestion is go through all the questions in your suggested answers, RTPs, which will actually give you more confidence, because more or less the questions are of same nature, not at all tough. You have solved MCQs relating to dates and so on, which at times becomes difficult, but if you go through the MCQ and the practice manual, I think you will gain more confidence. Right, friends? So if there's no further question, we can conclude the class and you can wind up for the day before you go to sleep. We'll meet our next class, that is next week, where we'll be covering the miscellaneous provisions of Companies Act, and thereafter in next month, the most important part, the insolvency bankruptcy code. Fine. So no further questions. So signing off. From my end, I'll just write down my email ID. If you have any doubts, you can share your doubts on this email ID. All in small capital. All in small capital. Yeah, 4:1. Real. Okay, I'll just explain. I'll take up that example. The 326 mentions that if an amount is, if there is an asset with the secured creditor, so 5 lakhs is the amount due to secured creditor, and they have security of 1 lakh. And they have security of 1 lakh. And workman compensation, sorry, it was what, 2 lakhs? 2 lakhs. And workman compensation claim was 5 lakhs. Now, if they have realized that 2 lakhs, section 326 says that this 2 lakh should be distributed to workmen compensation in proportion of the total overall claim of secured creditor and workmen. Because the law says that the first payment is towards workmen compensation. Now, because these securities, these assets are secured, we cannot say this 2 lakh will be given to workmen. So the law says that out of 2 lakh, you take away 1 lakh, fine, and you take away 1 lakh because there's a priority of payment to the workmen. Now, secured creditor balance is 4 lakhs and workmen is also 4 lakhs. Now, after this, let's say there is an amount which is to be further distributed by the liquidator. This 2 lakh was not with the liquidator. This 2 lakh was realized by the secured creditor, remember. Now, we come to the amount which is lying with the company to be distributed. Now, the law says if that amount is to be distributed, it will be distributed in such a manner. This 4 lakh is after that 2 years. We assume that this 4 lakh and secured creditor are now in pari passu. But that does not mean that they will be distributed equally. No, they will not be distributed equally. The law says that what you have to do is to calculate amount left 4 lakh and amount distributed by the secured holders to the workman company, that is 1 lakh. Whichever is lower, this 1 lakh. I will take this proportion and the amount due to workman compensation. I will take a ratio of these two for the balance amount distribution rather than these two. This ratio will be taken for pari passu distribution for the balance amount, not this amount. Because the priority of payment is to workmen rather than the secured creditor. So until unless the workmen are paid in full, and if not paid in full, then they will be paid in pari passu, but then that pari passu will have an overriding over the other payment. So workmen will be paid in proportion of 4:1, the balance amount. That is section 326. That is the only technical calculation real in this whole part. I hope it is clear now. So this 1 lakh and 4 lakh. First is distribution of 2 lakhs, 1 and 1, based on the ratio. Second is you will compare what is the balance left with the secured creditor and what is distributed to workmen. That is the second step. This is step 1. This is step 2, comparison. Whichever is lower, that will be taken to calculate the proportion of the secured creditor and the amount which is due to workman compensation. So I have taken 1 lakh, step number 2 mein 1 lakh, and then workman compensation 4 lakh. That is step number 3 to decide on the ratio 4:1. Right? So I hope this clears the stepwise proportionate calculation for distribution of amount for section 326. And if there is sufficient amount to pay both the secured creditors and workmen, then we don't need to do this all type of calculation. It is only when there is not enough funds to pay off the amount, then only these calculations will come handy. So, right, friends, thank you from my end, and hope real this is clear to you. I mentioned my email ID. You can very well get connected anytime you feel like to raise your points and query. Hope to answer it as early as possible. Thank you and see you soon.